got an A in deportment.
I'll call this meeting of the Oshkosh Plan Commission to order. And I'm Kathleen Prupp, the vice chair, and I'd like to have Darren introduce a new planner.
Sure. As you know, we've lost a couple principal planners here in the last year or so. We've lost David Buck, who went up to Menasha, then we lost Elizabeth, who went up to West Coast. And previous to that, he lost me for this position. So right now we have Mark Lyons, who's now our new principal planner. Mark, stand up so everybody can see you. Mark comes to us. We took Mark from Green Bay, same place we took David from, so we know a little bit from that from the Green Bay area. So he will be taking over the duties and doing the principal planning, most of the complex current planning stuff. So you'll be seeing him tonight, and going forward, he'll be working with them. So, Mark, thanks for
Welcome.
coming aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you.
For those of you that have not attended a Plan Commission meeting before, first of all, please turn off your cell phone. We don't need cell phones ringing. And I will mention the item. The planners will give a detailed information about the item. The Plan Commission will ask technical questions, and then we go to the audience for your comments. So when that time comes, please step up to the podium with a microphone, give your name and address and your views. And when that's finished, we'll come back to the Plan Commission for votes. So we'll call the roll.
David Boycek,
Present.
Ed Vaughn, Jeffrey Tomes,
Here.
Thomas Bartek, John Hess,
Here.
Steve Cummings, Kathleen Propp,
Here?
John Kiefer,
Here.
Robert Bygert,
Here.
Michael Ford.
Here.
You have the July 18, 2017 minutes. What's your pleasure?
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes approved. First item is accept bus stop easements at 375 North Eagle Street, 1100 West Smith Avenue, and 415 Jackson Street.
Thank you. The City of Oshkosh is requesting acceptance of easements for transit shelters at Oshkosh North High School, Oshkosh West High School, and the Winnebago County Courthouse. The North High School bus shelter will be placed along West Smith Avenue between the eastern parking lot and public right-of-way. The West High School bus shelter will be located near the corner of North Eagle Street and Southland Avenue. And the county courthouse bus shelter will be poured near the southwest corner of the parcel at the Algoma Boulevard Dawes Street intersection. And based on a yearly evaluation of bus stop activity and public input, Go Transit has identified these locations for new transit shelters. Easements are necessary as these shelters will be placed on private property. The school district and county will pour the concrete while Go Transit will provide and install the shelters. The North High School bus stop will have a 6-foot by 17-foot shelter on a 7-foot by 18-foot slab, and it will be installed near the current bus stop. And the West High School bus stop will be 5 feet by 10 feet in size on a 7-foot by 18-foot slab, placed near the current bus stop on Southland Avenue. And at the county courthouse sites, the bus shelter will be 5 feet by 10 feet in size and a 6-foot by 10-foot slab, and that will allow for removal of an existing bench, which will vacate a wide concrete path to the curb that riders can use for boarding. The Transit Advisory Board has approved the locations unanimously, and the Department of Public Works does not have any concerns with the proposal. And staff recommends approval of the acceptance of the proposed easements as requested.
Technical questions? David?
I understand that there's existing bus stop at the courthouse, but my question was there any safety evaluation if that's the appropriate place to stop a bus on such a major street?
We'll refer that question to Jim Collins, who's here who can better answer that than I.
Well, any of our stops, those go through the transit development planning process. So that process took place in 2013, and we're currently going through that process again. But that was evaluated at that time when they came up with the routes. And the reason we're putting a shelter there, it was at the request of some of the users of that stop. The current bench is right up against these streets, so whenever, it's raining or snowing, they get splashed pretty good if they're sitting at that bench, so. But yeah, to answer your question, we do look at that when we evaluate the routes.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Don't go away. Can I ask why the West High School shelter is so much smaller than the slab versus the other
Sure.
two, which are almost the same size as the slab?
Yes, so we have, our standard bus shelter is 5 foot by 10 feet. So that's what we are gonna use at the west location and then at the county location. We actually received a shelter from the county that they were no longer using, which is larger, and that's the one we're gonna put out by Oshkosh North. So we're building the slab larger at west in case we can either decide to put another shelter next to that, or if we decide we need a bigger shelter, then we could purchase one and put it on the slab, but that's the reason why they're different sizes. So we're gonna use the shelters we have in stock and then the one that we received from the county, but we're gonna build a slab larger at west in case we do have to either purchase a larger shelter or put another one on it.
Any other technical questions? Thank you. Anybody from the audience here to speak on this issue of bus easements? Anybody? Seeing none, back to the commission.
We'll accept this particular one.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Barseth,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Hens,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Second item, extraterritorial 4-lot land division certified survey map at the 3400 block of West 9th Street Road in the town of Algoma.
Thank you. And this is a 4-lot land division from 3 existing parcels containing a total of 28.78 acres. Lot 1 will be about 18 1/3 acres. Lot 2 will be about 8 2/3 acres. And lots 3 and 4 will be just under 5 acres, or 0.5 acres, as well as some dedicated public right-of-way. The subject site is located on the north side of 9th Street Road, east of Clearville Road in the town of Algoma. The site is mostly vacant and agricultural, along with a farm residence and associated buildings. The surrounding area consists of predominantly agricultural uses, along with single-family uses that become denser to the south and east. The purpose of the land division is to create 2 single-family sized lots for residential development. Lots 3 and 4 will be similar in size and will need to be rezoned to R1 ETZ in order to allow for single-family residential uses. Lots 1 and 2 do not have immediate plans for development and will continue to be used agriculturally. The land division will not alter the existing land use patterns in the area, and it is consistent with the city's 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use plan. Staff has no concerns with the proposed lot layout or size, as they are similar to other parcels in the immediate area. Staff recommends that lots 2, 3, and 4 be restricted to one access from 9th Street Road to alleviate traffic concerns. And here's the CSM. And staff recommends approval of the 4-lot extraterritorial land division as proposed with the following conditions. Lots 3 and 4 and adjacent portion of lot 2 have the zoning changed to R1 ETZ, and lots 2, 3, and 4 are restricted to one driveway access from 9th Street Road.
Thank you. Technical questions, Jeff?
On 2, you mean that each of those lots are restricted to one, or is there one for all 3?
Be one for all 3.
How are you going to do that? That can't be right.
Thought,
I would think it would be one for lot 3, one
One
for
each.
lot 4, and then lot 2 is the axis is in between.
it was thought during a staff review, they could share a driveway. Well, eventually, we envision this to become residentially developed, with this being sized appropriately enough for a public, 60-foot public right-of-way. And then they could access a lot on either side of this central driveway location.
So if we're
Trying
go-
to limit the number of
So if
access.
you're only gonna have one,
Mhm.
right, shouldn't we also put we always have put
Steve
cross
Bodie is here to
access?
talk about it. I'm interrupting us.
Jeff was summarizing it exactly as we had discussed. I was just, that was the intent, was to recommend that they keep a 60-foot corridor in the middle set up for future right-of-way to allow development to the north. Both lots 3 and 4 could have a cross-access easement across that for the time being, with one common access point onto 9th Street Road. City code would not allow for the driveways to be placed that close together on 9th Street, so this is a way to alleviate that problem, set up for future developments, and essentially just have the area ready to go so we don't have some of the problems that we have in some of the other areas with multiple access points on the arterial roadways.
Is there does the CSM currently have a cross-access for lots 3 and 4 from lot 2? Because I would assume that any drive, if lot 3 and 4 are gonna be developed, they're not gonna have any way of getting to their house. That's what I wanna alleviate, that the access point is gonna be through lot 2 into their driveways, and I would want to see now a cross-access variance or a cross-access agreement put together, or required to be put together
Yep.
for those 3 lots.
That makes sense. That makes sense because, yeah, you're gonna have to have other cars using it, so you're gonna wanna have a cross-access agreement that includes maintenance, blah, 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 that kind of stuff.
And it just stops them having to come back again through here to do all that. The other one that I wasn't sure of, where's the dedicated public right-of-way? Is that piece in between?
No, it's along 9th Street Road. Historically, the right-of-way has never been dedicated in this area. That's more or less glorified easements. And this is just formally dedicating what's already presumed to be right-of-way along 9th Street.
So those properties are in the city?
No. They're scheduled to come in 2023, on March 1st, for our agreement with the town of Algoma.
So how can we do the dedication of right-of-way if it's not in the city?
The county will be, because
Oh,
we
they-
don't
okay.
have,
You're just noting it as part of the CSM?
Correct.
Okay, I got you.
the county still has right-of-way authority.
So when we come back, Kathy, I'd want to talk about putting that cross-access as one of the
Yeah, we can throw on a condition for the
Yeah.
cross-access.
Any other technical questions? Anybody here from the public to speak about this item? Anybody? Hearing none, back to the commission. All right, Jeff.
One last question, the lots 3 and 4, the size of that lots, that's okay for,
Yes,
that meets the minimum?
yes, by far.
Okay, cool. Move to approve.
Do you want to add the condition?
With cross-access.
Yeah, we want to move to approve with the addition of, item number 3, that there be a cross-access agreement between lots 2, 3, and 4 to allow access from lot 2 to 3 and 4.
Okay,
I'll second.
any discussion? All right, we've got 3 conditions then. Ready to vote?
Kiefer,
Aye.
Reichert,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Borsuk,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Hens,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Third item, right-of-way vacation of alley west of South Main Street between 7th and 8th Avenue.
Thank you. The petitioner is the city of Oshkosh, and we are requesting the vacation of a 20-foot wide, 180-foot long alley that runs behind properties fronting the west side of the 700 block of South Main Street. The right-of-way was likely previously used for deliveries to former retail stores along South Main Street. and this alley runs north to south from West 7th Avenue to West 8th Avenue on the west side of 2 lots fronting the 700 block of South Main Street. The city's redevelopment authority owns these vacant lots on both sides of the alley, and the land will be added to the redevelopment site. The properties on the west side of the 700 block of South Main Street between 7th and 8th Avenue were acquired by the city between 2004 and 2007, and the buildings were demolished and the lots were ceded for future redevelopment. According to the Department of Public Works, the alley is no longer used or needed and can be vacated. Public Works is requesting that the city and any other utility facilities have the right to maintain existing utilities within the vacated alley. Staff supports the street vacation request as proposed. Traffic in the area will not be impacted by the alley vacation as the subject right-of-way area is no longer used. The proposed alley vacation will provide additional area for future redevelopment of the city-owned properties. And staff recommends approval of the right-of-way vacation of the alley west of South Main Street between 7th and 8th Avenue as requested.
Technical questions? John?
Not so much on this one, but I just want to ask staff, is this going to be a trend? Because there's that alley most of the way from, I would say, about 10th Avenue all the way through 16th Avenue along South Main. I mean, is this something that, or is this just a one-time?
Well, right now, it's a one-time thing. If you look at those alleys to the south, there's actually access being provided to those buildings from that alley. So, right now, those need to, right now, those need to stay intact. There's no need to maintain this, this alley at this point.
Okay.
Because the future development's gonna probably, if it goes the way we think it might go, you're gonna have a mixed-use building on that front of that lot, and then you'll have parking behind it and have parking support for the building that's up there.
Yep.
Are all those lots seeded lots now? I guess my question is, if that alley is paved, shouldn't we put a requirement that they remove that pavement and return it back to the green space that's on either side of the alley?
I think, I mean, that aerial showing all grass pretty
Yeah.
much.
It's all grass there.
I didn't know. I wondering if we would put that on there. If it's all grass, then it's a moot point.
Yeah, I believe it's all grass right now.
So, Steve, why don't you, we have some more technical items that have cropped up here. Steve's going to.
It appears we had an error getting between the departments. The intent is for the city to release all of the utility rights through here. State statute, by statute, we keep an easement on the vacated right-of-way for use for utilities, which essentially makes the area non-buildable for anyone to put anything other than a paved surface over the top of it in order to maintain the ability to put utilities in there. Our intent is that we do not have any utilities in there. We do not foresee the need to put any utilities in there. Recommend releasing the rights to that to allow the site to be fully developed with buildings or however is best determined for that location.
Does that mean we need another item on the approval? Another condition?
Steve, is there any
A
language we need in there? Because right now, we're just recommending right-of-way vacation. Usually when we do a right-of-way vacation resolution, we'll say easements. We'll say with the condition that an easement be maintained.
Statutorily, we maintain that unless we release it.
Okay, so we do have
Need
to,
to release it.
so what language you think we need to put in there, Steve?
We'll have to keep something broad that we can wordsmith it to meet the need here, but basically release of the city's utility easement rights provided statutorily or.
Release of the easement rights, with release of the city's easement rights?
Yes.
Staff recommends approval of the right-of-way vacation of the alley, blah, 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 as requested with release of the city's easement rights.
Ideally, we'd like to get all the utilities to release their rights through there. It'll be, without it being right of way, as long as there's no one in there, no one will be able to install.
But for now, we can only release our own easement rights.
Correct.
So we'll just put that on and we'll formulate, when we go forward with a resolution, we'll have whatever we need in resolution. But the plan commission's action now requesting, vacation with, release of utility easement rights.
Okay.
The city's utilities.
Okay. Can't remember if I asked anybody here, John.
Just because I want to be clear on this, is the city still maintaining ownership of this at all, or is it being transferred to those property owners? And if so, is it going down the center line to each side?
No, we're the property owner on either side, so it goes to us. It's the RDA. The RDA is the property owner on either side.
Okay, so it's gonna be, the city's gonna maintain ownership of that, they're just,
We're maintaining ownership of the entire lot right now. Hopefully that won't be like that in the future, but.
just wanted to be clear on it.
Yep, understood.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, anybody from the audience wishing to talk about the alley? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Motion to approve with the addition of the language needed.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Leggett,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Forsythe,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Benson,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crowell.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Next item, zone change from UI Industrial District to BP Business Park District for property located at 1919 Bowen Street.
Thank you. The Oshkosh Area Humane Society is requesting a zone change for a property they own at 1919 Bowen Street. The site was formerly the location of the Best Wash Car Wash, which closed in either late 2016, early 2017. The property was then listed for sale and then purchased by the Oshkosh Humane Society on June 15th of this year. The property is currently zoned UI Urban Industrial. Is approximately 3/4 of an acre in size and contains a 2,600 square foot building which serviced which was the location of the car wash and associated off-street parking area and driveway. The surrounding area has a wide range of uses, including commercial services and service uses to the north, multifamily residential and healthcare to the east, and industrial to the south, and institutional, which is the Humane Society to the west. Let's see here. The purpose for the zone change is to allow the Humane Society to combine their 3 parcels into one. Let's see if I can get this to work. This is the main location of the Humane Society on Shelter Court. They own this piece of land across the street on Shelter Court. And this is the recently acquired car wash that was acquired by the Humane Society. In order to combine all 3 parcels into one, you need uniform zoning. The current zone district of the car wash property is urban industrial, and the 2 other Humane Society properties are zoned BP Business Park. So if approved, this will enable the Humane Society to combine all 3 parcels into one and let them proceed with future plans for the site. Let's see. Oop. That's just an air photo showing the site with the main Society office location or building. This property here is primarily used for dog runs and has a storage building, and this is the previous car wash. The comprehensive plan recommends this area to be designated for commercial use. The zone change to business park is consistent with that recommendation, and staff is recommending the approval of the zone change from UI Urban Industrial District to BP Business Park District as requested.
Technical questions? Jeff?
Zoning just north of 1919.
One that is also business park. Let me go back to this slide here. What this zone change does, this grayish blue is all business park zoning, besides this little notch right here, which is zoned urban industrial with properties to the south and west. And filling this in with business
So
park kind of squares it off
that whole
nicely.
lot. Okay.
And removes some potential negative impacts to the business park properties. So.
Any questions? Anybody else? Seeing none, anybody from the audience wishing to speak to this on the Humane Society property? Anybody wishing to speak to the zone change on Humane Society property? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission. David?
I'd like, if there's an owner's representative, I'd like to have a question to them.
Sure. Come to the podium, please give your name and address.
My name is Joni Geiger. I'm the Executive Director for the Humane Society. I live at 75 Lake Street.
My question is, did you talk to the adjacent property owners, and in particular, those to the south, if there's any issues?
We did not. We do have a very good working relationship with all our neighbors, but I did not speak directly to this issue.
And I'll just go back to staff, with the adjacent property owners were
Yes.
made aware?
Yes.
All right.
So I'll notice it.
Thank
Any
you.
other question for Ms. Geiger? I guess not, thank you.
Thank you.
We're back to the commission now. What's your pleasure? Motion and a second, discussion? Excuse me?
Jeff?
Who did? Jeff did.
Sorry.
I second.
You're a little too quiet, people.
Everybody accused of that?
Okay, motion and
Usual.
second, and no discussion, so we're ready to call the roll.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Orsak,
All right,
Jones,
Aye.
Hens,
Aye.
Cummings,
aye.
Pop.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Item 5, approval of a specific implementation plan for a multi-tenant retail office use located on the 1000 block of North Washburn Street.
Thank you. This should look pretty familiar. This site was before you on June 20th of this year for a general development plan. The subject development area consists of 2 parcels, approximately 3.17 acres in size. Property currently has a zoning of SMU PD, which is suburban mixed-use district with a planned development overlay. The 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use plan recommend commercial development for the subject site. The development is located kind of on a corner or corner-like area of North Washburn Street. I'm going to go to the air photo here. I'm zoomed in a little too far, but this is the location of Lowe's on North Washburn Street. This is the location of the recently constructed Dick's Sporting Goods and PetSmart. And up in the middle, this is the proposed site for this development. Okay, up on the screen, I have the original GDP submittal, the general development plan, and then the new SIP submittal, which is the specific implementation plan. Not much has really changed between the two. The site consists of, or both site plans consist of 3 buildings designated for commercial or service type uses with up to, according to the petitioner, up to 10 potential tenants. More than likely that number will be lower. One building proposed is a bank building on the northern periphery of the site, approximately 2,500 square feet in area with associated parking and drive-through. Second building located on kind of the northeast portion of the property and just being shown to be about 5,700 square feet in area with 2 tenant spaces, and then a larger retail building with 4 tenants, size at about 80 to 50 square feet. Things did change a little bit with the resubmitted SIP submittal. The northeasterly building now is slightly larger at 8,000 square feet. However, the The southeastern building has been reduced in size down to, I believe that's 6,000 square feet, down from the original 8,200 square foot building on the GDP submittal. Also, the petitioner is planning on phasing this development in 2 phases. Phase 1 being the proposed bank site, and the southeastern tenant or commercial building, and then phase 2 would be the larger retail building on the north side of the property. Access to this site will be utilized by existing driveways off of North Washburn Street. And go to the site, or I'll go to the air photo. Okay. Yeah, the site is currently accessed by 2 driveways leading off of North Washburn Street. It's kind of a shared access to the site, one coming from the north side of Washburn and on the east side. This acts as a kind of a common driveway area for property or for visitors or shoppers wanting to access Lowe's property and the Dick's and PetSmart building to the south. Let me go to the site plan. Here's a close-up view. The internal circulation for the vehicles is well defined with the inclusion of several landscape islands at the entrances and parking row ends. With the exception of a wide pedestrian walk directly in front of the building's entrance and an existing 5-foot wide walk running along the west property line. The property does have interconnections for pedestrians to public right-of-way located right here, going up and north and out. And as far as parking, during the GDP approval process, Plan Commission communicated to city staff that the petitioner tried to reduce the number of parking stalls, which has been accomplished. Phases 1 and 2 show a total of 134 parking stalls, which is a reduction of 25 stalls from the 159 shown on the GDP submittal. The proposed 134 spaces, 122 of which will be constructed during phases 1 and 2. During phase 1, 12 parking stalls will be constructed, or 12 additional parking stalls will be constructed during phase 2. The total amount of parking stalls still exceeds the range of code-required parking stalls, which is a minimum of 56 stalls and a maximum of 69 stalls. The Common Council placed a condition on the original GDP submittal that a conditional use permit should be granted for the increase of the number of parking stalls by over 125% of what is allowed for the SIP approval. Staff also noticed there was another condition from the GDP, condition number 3, requiring all the landscape islands to meet code requirements, which has not been met. The code has a requirement of landscape islands being a minimum of 7 feet wide and 125 square feet in area. These 2 islands on the western side are still do not meet code requirements. They're sized at approximately 5 feet wide and under 125 square feet. So staff will be placing a condition that will be reviewed during site plan review that the landscape islands are increased to the minimum 7 feet wide. As far as signing and lightage, that GDP did provide a monument sign concept. There's a monument sign about 12 feet tall. No additional signage plans have been submitted, but signage will need to meet minimum zoning code requirements and will be analyzed during site plan review. A lighting plan has not been submitted, and again, that will be required during the site plan review process. Landscaping, a landscape plan was submitted, and here it is up on the screen. The landscape plan is more or less conceptual, and has been submitted with the application and includes a variety of shrubs and trees. The proposed building, the proposed landscaping is dispersed along building foundations and refuse enclosures. Located right here, dumpster enclosure there, and there. And they show an abundant amount of foundation plantings around all the proposed buildings, with exception of the foundation on the west side of the bank. With the location of the drive-through, doesn't make too much sense to require foundation landscaping along that side. But as a switch-off, staff is recommending that they extend this landscape planter area or planting area to extend further to the south to help shield or screen the drive-through of the bank. Final landscape numbers will be evaluated by staff during site plan review and ensure that meets minimum code requirements. Stormwater management, the petitioner has indicated in their narrative that stormwater from a site will be directed to the stormwater detention basin on the neighboring Lowe's property. I think I've got a photo of that. Oop. I'm sorry. There we go. Yeah, the development, when it went through its original PD process, has a central or a common drainage or detention basin that's to serve all three of these properties. So this development will be utilizing that existing pond, and it's sized appropriately for the proposed development. As far as building design, building elevations were only provided for the two-tenant building, which is the one on the southeast corner of the property. Let me get to it here. Okay, here we go. Building materials are not identified on the plan, but by looking at the renderings, it appears that the majority of the building contains a combination of brick and/or brick veneer and glass curtain systems, which are considered Class 1 materials, and EIFS, which is a Class 2 material. Based on this, it appears that the building does meet the architectural design standards for commercial buildings, so we do not have too much concern. But during site plan review, it will be verified that the materials are, in fact, what we think they are. One thing that was missing are the building elevations for the bank and the Phase 2 building. Staff is recommending, as a condition of approval, that the petitioner submit elevations of the two other buildings before the Planning Commission for review and approval. Unless, one exception for that would be if the Phase 2 building, if its architectural style is very similar to the Phase 1 building, we would forego that submittal requirement for the architectural review. Site plan. The site plan indicates that there's 3 dumpster enclosures located on the property. Due to the nature and site design, all 3 of them are located in what are considered front yards, which is prohibited by the zoning ordinance. So as staff is recommending for a base standard modification to allow the 3 enclosures to be located within the front yard. A condition of that base standard modification is we would like to see more enhanced landscaping to shield them from the public right-of-way a little better. It looks like they're doing some decent foundation plantings already, but we feel that it can be enhanced even further. And staff is comfortable with this base standard modification. We like the design of the buildings, or locations of the buildings along the periphery of the site, which kind of hides the internal parking, off-street parking area from the public right-of-way. So staff is recommending approval of the specific implementation plan with a few conditions and base standard modifications. One being, the site contains 2 parcels, a little sliver parcel on the north, which we're requesting to be combined with the parent parcel. The westernmost landscape island, which I mentioned, shall be increased to the code-required minimum of 7 feet wide. A base standard modification to permit the parking facilities to exceed 125% of the development's minimum number of required spaces. The landscape bed west of the proposed Banks drive-through to be extended to the south to provide more intensive landscaping. A base standard modification to permit the 3 proposed dumpster enclosures to be located within the front yard with more intensive landscaping. And lastly, the architectural renderings for the future bank and Phase 2 commercial buildings to be reviewed and approved by a plan commission, with the exception if the Phase 2 commercial building is in similar design to the Phase 1 building. So, thank you.
Technical questions, Jeff?
Back to the overview. Yeah. One of the things I noticed off the get-go, and we don't know, and I assume the developer doesn't know what kind of tenants are gonna be in those buildings, but I don't see any access for deliveries except through the front of the building. Did you guys think about that or talk to the developer about that there's no delivery area other than a conflict with patrons and people walking and stuff? That's the only place that they'd be able to do any kind of deliveries?
For the smaller tenants, that's generally, I think, the way we've been seeing it, but I'll refer that to the applicant as he's in the audience, so he's making note of that right now.
And then I get why they may need more parking stalls depending on how many different businesses there are. But in item 3 in the requirements, I think you need to put a cap in there. You have that they can exceed the 125%, but fine, they could put 200 stalls, they're in compliance. And I don't think that was our intent. I think it should be that they can exceed the 125, but no more than 130 stalls.
Or you could just put the cap on what they're proposing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, however,
we
there
had a
needs
clean
to
up
be a
language.
cap of 130 stalls. Because that's a lot more than what the code requires, but in this instance, I think the code doesn't apply, because there could be 8 to 10 different businesses there, and therefore have different patrons going to it that would exceed more than 6 per store.
Okay.
I get that.
Well, I think we're capping, what we're doing right now is capping this development right here the way it is with the amount of parking spaces that are there, but that is in excess of our requirements by what, 125, are we at, is that the 125?
It's in excess of 125%.
They're allowed up to 69 stalls,
What is it,
So-
are they exceeding it by 125%?
over 125%. That's what the base standard modification's for.
And all I'm asking, Darren, is saying it's okay to exceed 125%, but have no more than 130.
Well, it should be,
Well, they are proposing 134 per this plan.
134 stalls. But they're gonna reduce a couple because
Because they're gonna lose, if you
Lose 2.
expand the island, they're gonna lose 4. Right? The ends
Correct.
are gonna, the 2 end stalls on each island are gonna be lost.
Correct.
So that goes down to 130.
130?
Yeah, we should have cleaned up the language to really refer to the development that's being proposed on that site, and Jeff was being a little bit more expansive on it, but I just think we just need to clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, you just need to,
More
okay.
precise.
And if I can just, because this is the same point, Jeff.
Other technical questions?
I'm not.
He's
I'm
not finished
done.
yet. I just wanted to jump in because
I'm
this is
marking
the
them
same
off.
thing. Are we going by the development's minimum or maximum number? Because it says in here minimum number, 125% of the minimum number.
Yeah.
Per the code, it is the 125 over the maximum it should be. Because
Just cleaning that up as long as we're talking about it.
because the difference between minimum and maximum is 25%.
it's over the max.
Mhm.
That's obvious.
Yeah,
It's
they're way over max.
Okay,
That was all I
got
wanted to
anything-
add in on that.
Mhm.
If we're gonna.
I know, but I just wanted to get that in on that.
Kathy, I still got 3, 4 more things.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Signage, when you talked about the monument sign, that's just one monument sign, and then I'm assuming, based off the Phase 1 building, that each building can have signage on the building up to whatever code allows, is that correct?
Correct.
And one monument sign,
One monument sign for, per the property.
and that's located where?
Yeah, it's over,
It's right,
sign right here.
And access to the site is gonna be from the current roads that are going into Lowe's and/or into PetSmart.
Yeah, let me go to the air photo on that. And there are cross-access agreements in place already for that,
Yeah, that's, was what I was getting to.
right there.
All right,
So, yeah, there's no
so
issue
no
with that.
new access off Washburn.
No.
All right, and then one that I know Kathy would be interested in, and that's the design. You know, I like the idea that they're putting the parking on the inside. You know, we talked about that before. But since this also has visibility to the 41 corridor, and we talked about that at length on the PetSmart building, the backs of these buildings need to be, you know, we don't know exactly what the materials and stuff is of the buildings, and I'm not necessarily in agreement that we don't have the Phase 2 come back through so we can see that, to ensure that the backs of those buildings that are facing Washburn and facing 41 are aesthetically acceptable based off conversations we've had in the past.
Yeah,
Those are the backs of the buildings that are gonna be facing the, you know, that area.
well, this shows the 4 elevations of the proposed building, so it looks like they're putting in 4 windows, at least along Washburn Street. So if they present something to the city or submits to the city that's similar in design, after we verify the materials, we'd be comfortable with the second building if it's,
I assume site plan still comes back through here anyway? It does not?
no.
No, not, if it comes back and it's similar in appearance, and that box that's the same size, then it wouldn't come back, because there's not a need to come back, because you're essentially looking at what they're proposing. It's gonna be the same thing, so we wouldn't run it back. If they come back with a radically different building, different appearance, potentially a different size, then we bring it back.
Does our code, this is the last one, Kelly, does our code require the refuge enclosures to be the same materials as used on the buildings?
We say compatible, I believe,
yeah.
similar in appearance or compatible. So it's not, you know, if you've got a masonry building up, we probably don't wanna see a wood fence right next to
Yeah,
it.
but since we're given a base standard modification, cause we consider this in the frontage, shouldn't we require those refuse areas to be more aesthetically appealing than what we would typically do in our code? Because they are considered in the front face, and that's what I was trying to get at.
No, I understand.
And maybe we can discuss that after public comments, but I'd like to talk about that one, as maybe amending that part of the refuse area. Thank you, Kathy.
Now he's done. All right, Steve.
Thank you. This is a two-phase development, the bank being the first, and then retail number 2. What are the proposed start and end dates for the entire project?
That would be a question for the petitioner.
Gentlemen,
Okay, any more technical questions? Anybody in the audience wanting to speak to this issue, including the petitioner?
Happy to.
Now we know we wanna.
Hey, guys. Ed Bowen, 601 Oregon. I will try to tick off as many answers to as many questions as I was able to jot down there. Steve, just because yours is fresh, Right now, we're probably anticipating, so to clarify, phase one, as we have it described, is essentially everything in the unshaded area. That will be starting construction, it's for delivery no later than April 1st is what we're obligated to with some of our leases. So backing into that one, you'd probably see groundbreaking in September, October-ish. The first building to be delivered will be the larger of the two on the southeast corner of the site. Northwest corner of the site will likely be delivered, I want to say, probably late spring, early summer of next year. By then, we hope to have our plans nailed down for phase two, which is everything in that shaded area. And we'd anticipate that probably under construction next summer, or, delivery next fall, I would suspect. So, if things go as planned, which we all know in real estate always happens, I would suspect about a 12 to 14 months period. Probably the best that I've got for you, Steve. But again, the market will dictate that phase two portion. And as it relates to the phase two site plan, and to a larger degree, the smaller building on the northwest corner, as far as the building elevations and design and all that sort of stuff, you guys will see those again. The smaller of those two buildings, which is slated right now for a financial institution, will be getting a design unique to itself and relatively unlike the renderings that you're seeing for the other one. So that'll come back in front of you. You guys will have a chance to grill me again on that one. And then most likely, I think we've done as best we could on the phase two site plan to show you kind of what the maximum size of that building would be. The sizes of the buildings on this site are governed by a number of things that are sort of internal and external to our process. There's an ECCR, an easement covenant conditions and restriction document that governs this entire site that was put in place by Lowe's when it was originally developed. That dictates what size these buildings can be, how many buildings, where they can be located, what height they can be. So that's sort of a private method of managing what we can do on this site. The public method includes obviously what we're doing here. And then you see kind of in the middle of the northwest corner in the middle building, that open area there is the A&R gas pipeline that runs through the middle of that. So we have a number of sort of intruding factors on this site that make it a little bit more challenging from a site development and layout standpoint. So there's a lot of things that go into how this site got laid out, how the buildings are configured, all that sort of stuff, which make it a little bit different than some of the other ones. But the moral of the story is that you will see that I didn't bore you, did I? I'm sorry, Bob. All right. Nice to see you too. So that will come back because, like I just said, we pretty much laid out, I think, what the biggest possible building can be there for the sake of impervious surface calcs, parking, all that sort of stuff, just so we know it's there. It could come back looking smaller. It could come back looking shallower. It could come back looking deeper and skinnier. I'm not totally sure. So that one you will have another shot at. The building design on the northwest building will also come back for sure. The delivery question that you had, Jeff, so you're correct to some degree, and so is Darren, though, because we're seeing that a lot more often, is that smaller tenants are choosing to have their deliveries done through the front door, which doesn't absolve us of any responsibility to make sure that that's not blocking pedestrian areas and things like that. We've tried to allocate some space in the sort of where that dumpster enclosure for that southern building is, that you can allow a truck to back in. Neither of these tenants, one of which is a medical user, the other of which is a retail user, is a delivery-heavy type user. So you're not going to see the need for a dock. You're not going to see, boxes and boxes rolling off big tractor trailers, 5-6 times a week or anything like that. Delivery service here is going to be relatively sporadic and relatively low impact. So we think that by using that location for sort of double duty, I think we can accommodate that. So, yeah, as Darren mentioned, we are going to be removing more stalls. I have to apologize because I know we were pretty clear at the last one. I don't know why those islands came back at 5 feet instead of 7 feet. I chastised our engineer for that, so I'm not totally sure why that came back that way. But to maintain our truck circulation, we left the aisles that wide. So those will be expanding, those 5-foot islands will be expanding to the east. That'll eat up 4 to 5 spaces on the end of those 2 rows. We may take that 1 space out on the bottom just to balance it out. So there will be a lower number there. And however you guys choose to wordsmith it and hold us to what we're showing here, we're going to be fine with. So whatever you want to come up with is going to be okay by me.
Can you talk about the dumpster enclosures if we go to change that to be the same materials as what your guys thought?
Jeff, talk loud enough so people can hear.
I got him. He was asking me, and I'll get you in here too. He was asking me about the dumpster enclosures, whether or not we were agreeable to a change of, I think you're saying identical as opposed to compatible?
Yeah, to be similar in the materials because it's in the
Yeah.
front yard. You
Yeah.
want that more aesthetically appealing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think, I guess, my interpretation of the word compatible in this instance basically would say similar or identical or whatever. We're going to use as much of the same material as we possibly can
I'm
across.
thinking about maybe using like.
We're not going to use
some of the
glass.
same- No, I'd be using.
I'm not-
No, but some of the same type of material that you're using that you
Yeah.
face those
Yep.
sides with.
Yeah.
Is all I'm-
Yep, that would be, I think that's what we would probably go for. This is a great opportunity, I think, for all of us, frankly, because, we've been talking, I know at Plan Commission, we talk a lot about how can we put parking away from the street? How can we do this? This is an opportunity for us to sort of go through this exercise, but also recognize that it comes with some challenges, like how do you do garbage? How do you deal with the backs of buildings that are now all of a sudden the front of buildings? And I think, as you notice on there, we've tried to make the backs of these buildings, unlike PetSmart, where we were sort of dictated what that the side of that building was, how it was visible from the road. We've tried to make the backs of these buildings as identical to the fronts of the buildings, yet still maintain that functionality, the emergency egress, all that sort of stuff. We've tried to do that as much as possible. So there's a lot of things that I think are opportunities for us to learn from this site, but I think it does present us with some challenges. Not insurmountable by any means, but yeah, I think utilizing some of those materials, which is primarily brick veneer, ephes, all that sort of stuff, we have no problem translating that over into the dumpster enclosures at all. I think that's all I had written down, so I don't know.
I've got one quick question.
Sure.
I've now forgotten.
Well, you know where to find me if you got
Maybe
questions,
I can.
Kathy.
Oh, I know. Going out to the site, it's mounded up.
Yeah.
It's higher than, and I'm presuming that was fill from the earlier site. Are you going to be leveling that out? Not really, or?
Short story is to the best of our ability. Long story is I wish that was fill from the previous site. I wish that was fill from the first phase. That fill has a long and storied history that we probably don't need to get into. But some of it we cannot disturb or should not disturb. So we'll be using it on different parts of the site. And there's most likely you're going to see it come down a little bit. The transition, the slopes are going to be a lot more functional. You're not going to from the sidewalk, you're not gonna go up, 7 feet the way that it does right now, but it will have a distinct increase from the road, so, which is great from a stormwater management standpoint, not as great from a digging foundation standpoint, so.
Any other questions for the petitioner? I guess not, thank you.
Just as a commentary, I want to thank staff for sort of accommodating the way that this request came through in the phased nature of it. We have people who are still designing buildings. We have sites that may or may not be, 8 to 6,000, 4,000 square feet. So I appreciate you guys giving us a little bit of flexibility in how you approve this. So, thanks.
Anybody else wishing to speak to this development? Anybody else? Back to the commission.
The only two things I would like to take in consideration for the conditions is on 3 to wordsmith that, to limit that to 130 stalls. And then to put something about in the refuse enclosure, the refuse enclosures have to use materials.
Yeah, I can tell you what
The same type of materials as used on the building to construct the refuse enclosure areas.
Yeah, dumpsters enclosures to be constructed with similar materials as the principal buildings.
All right.
And then I changed number 3 based on our modification to permit the parking facilities to exceed 125% of the development's maximum with a cap of 130 spaces.
Okay. So I'd move to approve that.
Second.
Discussion.
Keeper. Ford.
Aye.
Forsythe.
Aye.
Bowen. I'm sorry. Jones.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Rock.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
This time, we would like to,
As you
what's
know,
the technical
as
word?
we know, we have a meeting also scheduled with the extraterritorial zoning committee. And because some of the items that are coming up on the plan commission are gonna take, I think there's gonna be some discussion. We'd like to briefly suspend the plan commission meeting, open the extraterritorial zoning meeting to handle that zone change request. It's a simple one, and then adjourn it and come back into the plan commission. So, if the plan commission would like to do that, or we wanna keep on.
Would you allow that? Okay, thank you. Then we will,
We need a motion to recess.
we need a motion to suspend,
Recess?
recess?
Yeah.
Motion to recess, the planning commission meeting briefly for the purpose of the extraterritorial zoning committee. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Planning
All right,
commissioners,
excuse me.
just sit here. We need to invite our Town of Algoma people forward.
OshkoshMedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at OshkoshMedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at OshkoshMedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
We do have a little chat, we do a little chatting, but for everybody's time around the room, we should just do a brief introduction, just go around and see who's here from our friends from the town of Algoma, and
Right, introduce yourself from the Town of Algoma quickly.
Edie Clark, Town Supervisor.
Joel Rasmussen, Town Chairman.
And I'm Benjamin Krummenauer, the administrator for the town of Algoma. Nice seeing all of you.
Former
again.
plan commission member.
Yes.
Former plan
Briefly.
commission member for one time.
But it was memorable.
I have, are you the town chair, are you the chair of this extraterritorial?
Yes, I am.
I thought so.
Yes, I am.
We'll let you handle it from here.
Okay, we'll just start right in then. We'll call this extraterritorial zone committee to order. Start with roll call.
Ben Krummenauer.
Present.
David Forsythe.
Present.
Ed Bowen.
Here.
Thomas Forsythe. Jeffrey Jones.
Here.
Joel Rasmussen.
Here.
Clark. Here.
Okay. We'll go to approval of January 19th, 2016 minutes, the last time we met.
Second.
Any additions or corrections? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried.
One abstain, please.
Excuse me?
Abstain, please.
Okay.
Okay. Oop, got my papers mixed up here. All right, we'll go to subject here. Zone change from A2 ETZ General Agriculture Extraterritorial District to R1 ETZ Single Family Residence Extraterritorial District for property located at the north side of the 3400 block of West 9th Street Road in the town of Algoma. Paul Pickert, owner petitioner.
Thank you. Okay, this is part B of a request that was before the Plan Commission earlier today. Very quick. This was a 4-lot land division. One of the conditions of approval was the rezoning of, where's my mouse? Of this portion of lots 3, 4, and 2 to A2, from A2 ETZ to R1 ETZ. Reason being, the agricultural zoning has a 35-acre minimum lot size requirement and prohibits residential uses. The petitioner was hoping to, or proposing to, divide off 2 smaller residential sized lots for residential development. Oop, I always get these buttons mixed up. Okay, here's a site plan showing the property with the 2 proposed carved residential lots. And this is the existing land use map of showing the site with the current A2 ETZ zoning. Primarily the existing use is agricultural, and part of lot 3 does have a wooded area. This is the city's comprehensive land use plan. The yellow represents residential, so the zone change to R1 ETZ is consistent with the city's comp plan. The areas in white are areas that are in the town of Algoma's protected areas. City relinquished any zoning authority over there. And it's just a close-up view of the proposed zone change area. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the zone change from A2 ETZ to R1 ETZ as requested.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have anything on that?
Is that for all 4 lots?
No, just
the 2.
Just lot 2?
No, that's
The 2 lots.
3, 4, yep, just that blue boundary area.
Oh, so just lots 3 and 4?
3 and 4, yes.
All right, got it. Does that cause a problem with it doesn't include the piece in between 3 and 4?
Correct.
Just one technical question here. With respects to the zoning and the building itself, am I right to assume that for all building setbacks, everything, it is all City of Oshkosh responsibility?
For development, the owner or developer needs to get zoning approval from the city of Oshkosh, but still gets building permits from the town of Algoma.
The reason why I ask is because in R1 zoning for the county, which we administer, or we hold the county zoning, it's minimum 200-foot lot requirement for unsewered lots.
Mhm.
Doesn't have any sewers from the town standpoint. Is the city gonna be planning on providing sewer to it?
Sewer is available for lot 4. It's immediately in the street and in front of the property. It would need to be extended to service lot 3. Aaron, no,
Can you go back to the lot that we see which lot?
okay. Yeah, the city's sanitary sewer and water main end almost in the middle of lot 4. But per our agreement with the town of Algoma, we follow the R1 zoning standards, so we have to follow the minimum lot standards for the R1 ETZ district, which is 60 feet wide, 7,200 square feet and 100 feet deep, and these lots will exceed that.
I mean, our standards from
Mhm.
our.
Yeah,
there's some
not your
issues on
R1.
Your end, but
Correct.
our end,
I just wanted to make sure, I basically want to know what the timeline was for utilities to be extended. Since it's not likely that you're gonna be able to get a mound or anything in there if that
Yeah,
applicant
because-
wanted to build,
Mhm.
say, next week.
Mhm. Plus, they would have to petition to annex into the city prior to or acquiring city utilities. This area is destined to come in 2023 on March 1st.
That's correct.
Mhm.
Jeff?
Yes.
One more technical thing, just in case some of you guys weren't here, that in what we did before in approving the change of the lot divisions, we required the cross-access agreement between lots 2 and 3 and 4. Because 3 and 4 will not have direct access onto 9th Street. So that's part of what we approved earlier, as part of the City of Oshkosh Planning Commission.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval?
I will second.
Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Blumenauer,
I,
Boyce,
Aye.
Vaughn,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for coming in.
Hey, you carry the message forward. So excited
All right.
about it. Extraterritorial zoning.
Plan Commission will resume our meeting. Thank you, Plan Commission, for indulging this.
Ed is bolted.
Item 6A is zone change from I Institutional District to SMU PD Suburban Mixed Use District with Planned Development Overlay for property located at 1860 Wisconsin Street.
And as Jeff is booting that up, he wrote the staff report, so. Coming up.
Did we actually need a motion to resume or not? I'm just following the.
Sure, let's have a motion to resume our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Just didn't want
Thank you,
anybody
John.
to, yeah, didn't want anybody to get us on a technicality.
All right. We're in a zone change now.
Okay, this is a two-part request, part one being a zone change from I Institutional to SMU PD, suburban mixed use with a planned development overlay at 18, well, the first part is taking place at 1860 Wisconsin Street. And then, item 6B is, an approval of a general development and specific implementation plan for a plan development amendment for modifications of a drive-through facility at McDonald's on Jackson Street, so that'll be part two. Okay. Killian Management Services, which is representing McDonald's, is requesting a zone change for a 30-foot strip of land located to the west of the current McDonald's property. Up on the screen is the existing land use map showing the McDonald's property in relation to the 30-foot strip where the zone change is being requested, which is hatched in purple. And then to the west is Our Savior Lutheran Church, which is selling a 30-foot strip to McDonald's. The current zoning is I Institutional. The reason for the zone change request is to enable McDonald's to combine it with their parent parcel, similar to the previous Humane Society item. In order to combine parcels together, it has to be one unified or uniform zone district, which is the reason for this request. Additionally, the McDonald's is proposing to do drive-through expansion to their facility, which necessitated the acquisition of some additional land, or the 30-foot strip that they are acquiring from the church. The subject property, or the 30-foot strip, is designated for institutional use by the comprehensive land use plan, but staff is still supportive of the rezone, as the intent of the request is to combine this small sliver lot with the neighboring McDonald's property, which is recommended by the comprehensive land use plan for commercial use. So the far majority of the property is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. So with that, staff is recommending approval of zone change from I institutional to SMU PD, suburban mixed use district, with plan development overlay as requested.
David, technical questions.
Yeah, because this is somewhat of a package deal with A and B, I have some concerns about the size of the rezone parcel.
Okay.
And why it's not larger, so that we don't have to deal with reduced side yard setbacks and change in buffering.
That will be explained in Part B.
Huh? Yeah, but I'd rather hear that now before I vote on this. I mean, it's,
Well,
it's.
are you generally supportive of the zone change? Then we change the zone and.
Yeah, but I'm not,
You can-
but I.
Not the size of the parcel.
That is correct, and if,
Okay. Well, then, why don't we have more technical questions and we'll hear from. More technical questions?
Not on the zone.
Not right now? Okay, anybody here from the audience to speak to this question about size of parcel being sold?
So I'm Steve.
Come to the
Sorry.
podium and,
Hi, everyone. So is it possible?
name and address.
My name is Steve Killian. I could give you, do you want my office address or the Jackson Street McDonald's
Either one.
address? The 1722 Clarence Court, West Bend, Wisconsin. So I think in the second piece of this, that'll be explained. I think it'll be easier for me to answer that question after that.
Jeff can go into number 2, too. If that's what
Okay.
the plan commission wants, if it's
All right,
easier-
well,
it's
if
easier to
David's
evaluate-
concerned, so what we will do then is explain the second part of this, and then you can come back and,
Yeah, speak better to that at that point. That'd be great. Thank you.
okay, all right. Then, Plan Commission, is that all right if we have the information given now? It is, so go ahead.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Item 6B.
Okay, this is approval of a general development and specific implementation plan, a plan development amendment for a drive-through expansion for property located at 1863 Jackson Street, which is the McDonald's property. The subject development located at the southwest corner of Jackson Street and West Grunwald Avenue consists of 2 parcels totaling approximately 1.01 acres. Currently, where's my mouse? There we go. The McDonald's main site, and they also own this strip of land to the south of the McDonald's building. This site was developed in 1998, or received a plan development approval in 1998, which is Resolution 9844, when a former traditional style restaurant was raised and replaced with the current retro style building. The property currently has the SMU PD Suburban Mixed Use District zoning designation with a plan development overlay. The 10 and 20-year comprehensive land use plan recommends commercial development for this subject site, so that is consistent. The development is bounded by automobile sales to the north, commercial shopping center to the east, vacant land and retail to the south, and a church to the west. As far as use, the applicant is not proposing any change of use to the property, but is rather expanding and modernizing the existing drive-through facility. Site plan showing that. Currently, the restaurant utilizes a double tandem drive-through, where now the applicant is proposing to convert it to a double side-by-side drive-through, similar to the McDonald's on South Keller Street, if you're familiar with that. Per the applicant's narrative, this will increase capacity of the drive-through and reduce queue lines. The subject's property consists of the current 2 parcels and a third proposed parcel, which was part of the rezone request in Part A. The applicant states that they are planning to acquire that 30-foot strip from Our Savior's Lutheran Church and combine it with a McDonald's property, which is shown right here. This is the proposed 30-foot strip of land they are proposing to acquire. And all 3 lots will be combined into one via a certified survey map, which I do have a copy of. I will share with you. And the 30-foot strip is subject to the site of the previous agenda, which was rezoned from I-institutional to SMU PD, suburban mixed use with plan development overlay. Staff reviewed the original plan development, and we had discovered that the southern property was conditioned to be deed restricted to the northern property. This was done. However, the restriction is set to expire on May 22nd, 2018. Staff is recommending, instead of renewing the deed restriction, that all 3 parcels should be combined into one, which they did accomplish with the submitted certified survey map. The reconfigured drive-through, I think I have a better shot of that. Landscape plan, okay. The reconfigured drive-through begins with a 10.5-foot entrance or queue lane, which splits into a 13-foot and a 10.5-foot lanes as you drive south and split off from each other, and then drive up to the menu board and the ordering station. And then after that, the 2 lanes merge back into one again, where it leads to the payment window and food pickup window, and of course leave. The location of the additional improvements proposed is the addition of a bypass lane to the west of the double lane drive-through to allow easier access to get around the drive-through section, and 6 additional off-street parking areas, angled stalls, just to the northwest of the property. The proposed pavement is located down to a minimum of 4.46 feet from the newly created lot line right here. Staff is recommending a base standard modification for the reduced setback, where normally a 10-foot side yard setback is necessary. Staff is recommending, or staff is comfortable with this modification, as the site does abut another parking lot. So it's not having much negative impact on the neighboring property. And as far as site design, the property currently contains, or without the 30-foot strip, currently contains 39,000 square feet of impervious area, or 88.2% of the site, and 5,190 square feet of green space, which equates to 11.8% of the space or the property. The proposed improvements, which do include the new 30-foot strip, increases the impervious, or drops the total impervious down to 83.1%, and increases the overall green space up to 16.9%. So we are seeing an increase in overall green space. The suburban mixed-use district does have a cap of 70% for impervious surface ratio, but since we are seeing an overall decrease in the amount of impervious surface, no additional base standard modification is required. The site has 2 access points, one off of Jackson, or I'm sorry, one access off of West Grunwald Avenue, and 2 access points off of North Jackson Street. The petitioner is not proposing any changes to the access to the site. Parking, the site currently has 57 off-street parking stalls. 47 90-degree stalls located in the main customer parking area north of the building. And north of the building, so I understand. And also 6 new angled stalls located at the northwest corner of the property. And then down to the south are another series of angled parking. I don't have the number there for some reason. Anyways, based on the use inside of the building, the development is to provide between 15 and 18 parking stalls. So a base standard modification will be needed to permit the additional parking, which is already 317% more than what is currently allowed. In the petitioner's narrative, there is no indication as to the need for additional parking. And during the time of the writing of this report, staff was unable to get this information from the applicant's representative. Signage and lighting, the submittal does not include a lighting or photometric plan, but the site plan does show that the existing light poles are to be relocated to accommodate the drive-through improvements and the bypass lane. The lighting on the site will be required to meet zoning code requirements and will be reviewed during site plan review. The sign package for the drive-through improvements was partially included, which is up on the screen. It shows some rudimentary proposed signage. Staff will be expecting more formalized sign package during site plan review, and again, we'll need to meet minimum code requirements. A formal landscape plan has been submitted to this site, right here. Contains a wide variety of shrubs and trees along the west property line. The plan also shows a number of plantings located within the queue line island, which is right here, to again increase that green space. The point calculations provided by the applicant show that they are proposing 698.5 points and are proposing, they're proposing 698.5 points, where only 608 points are required. Again, staff will review the landscape plan for compliance during site plan review. The property is subject to buffer yard landscape requirements from the church property to the west. Normally, a 10-foot minimum setback is required, or I should say allowed, if a 6-foot tall privacy fence is constructed. Staff reviewed this, and again, due to the property abutting the church parking lot, staff feels a fence is excessive and would be more aesthetically pleasing to provide additional plantings along west property line. So we are recommending for a base standard modification to not require the 6-foot tall privacy fence along that west lot line. Staff does have some concerns with loss of landscaping. Go to the air photo. Okay. The 30-foot strip of land does show a bunch of mature trees that are currently exist on the site. The church is going to lose their utilization of that landscape area due to the land transfer. The applicant does state in the narrative that the church is in the process of expanding their parking lot, although no submittal has been made to the city. But staff is recommending that the applicant coordinate with the representatives of the church to either relocate the existing landscaping, if that's possible, onto the church property, or replace the equivalent amount of landscaping due to the land acquisition to keep the church in compliance. Stormwater management, the grading and drainage plan was provided, but however, the project is small enough where the site will only need to collect and convey stormwater. The Department of Public Works has reviewed the proposed development plan and does not have any concerns with the proposed site layout. Final stormwater management plans will be reviewed and approved by the Department of Public Works as part of the site plan review process to obtain building permits. So staff believes that development meets requirements required of plan development and is recommending approval of the conditional use permit with 3 conditions. Condition number 1, that the 3 parcels, including the 30-foot strip of land acquired by the church, will be combined to create 1 parcel, which has been, well, it's in the process of being achieved through a certified survey map that's in the process of being reviewed. Condition 2 is a base standard modification to allow down to a 4.46 front yard or side yard setback for the proposed parking area and drive-through bypass lane. And one last, on condition 3, a base standard modification to exempt the buffer yard requirement for the 6-foot tall privacy fence along the west property line, and instead be landscaped with more intensive plantings as approved by the Department of Community Development.
Okay, back to technical questions on both of these items. John?
Going back to the aerial view, please, if you would. How, yeah, either, well, yeah.
I clicked
There, that one's a
many
little better. How is the church gonna be able to meet the setback requirements for that parking lot, seeing as it extends into the property that they're selling?
During the review of the certified survey map, they will be required to reduce or cut back that paved area to the 7.5-foot side yard requirement the church has, so that's being handled through the CSM review.
The CSM will be coming back to us.
No, this CSM's being approved administratively. It's not a
Okay.
land division, it's a combination.
Okay. Jeff?
So it's a burden on the church if they tear up that parking lot and they have to adhere to our new parking lot code, it's gonna be a burden on the church.
Once the church
Down
has
to
decided
move
to,
back.
yeah, the church has decided to move forward with this, they've obviously worked out an agreement between the 2 property owners. They're gonna have to cut back, they're gonna have to both cut back that parking lot and landscape.
Now, my 2 issues, one is that I'm concerned about, what buffer is in between that church and McDonald's now, because I'm assuming he's putting in a double for increased volume of business. So with losing all that landscaping there, and I understand he's putting in points, but that doesn't necessarily provide an adequate buffer unless we stipulate that he's got to plant arborvitae or something that gets to that 6-foot tall type fence, because our code requires that he has to put in a fence, and we're eliminating that.
Yeah, well, part of that condition is required more intensive landscaping in that area unless you want to
Yeah, but I'm
tack
not
on
sure what that
specific
means.
requirements.
I mean, that just means more bushes. I'm concerning height and noise, something that deadens that, where a fence would typically do some of that. So I have that concern. The other one, if you go to the site overview, and you said you didn't have any information on why they needed those additional 6 stalls, I am concerned about at least the first 2 or 3. If somebody's backing out there, somebody's turning on in ground wall, they're not gonna be able to come in. They're gonna be sticking out in the street, until that, and potentially cause a traffic hazard.
Bottleneck?
Yeah, well, not necessarily bottleneck, but it could cause an accident. So I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of at least those first 2 or 3 stalls that would interfere with the egress ingress into that area. And 2, I don't necessarily see a need for increased stalls, given the fact that they're so far over the maximum now. I'm okay if they have 3, but those first 2 or 3, I would think, would interfere with the ingress coming into the area and create a potential hazard that I'd want to avoid.
Yeah, that's the main reason why we didn't include that as a basic standard modification to allow the increased parking. We want to get more information from the applicant.
Yeah, I just don't want to approve this site plan with those drawn in and think, okay, we're fine. The other issue is this whole buffer between the church and
All right, David.
Two things, and I'd almost flip it around as far as the parking stalls, in that it's the ones the furthest south, if they can get in, they're gonna be stranded if they're queued up, at maximum use. But I'm probably more concerned about the 4.5 foot side yard, intensive or not, and that is the maintenance of it. In particular, in winter months with snow removal, what is the assuredness that year on year, that those are gonna be maintained to its intended purpose? How do we assure that?
The landscaping?
Yeah.
Well, the landscaping, the requirement of the code is landscaping has to be maintained in perpetuity. If it's not, we order it back in. I don't know what to tell you, David, that's what we do.
It just seems.
Something
that's
else
a
that you
con- that's a
want,
cons-
you want the petitioner to be able to respond to now?
Yeah, well, and I can wait for that, yes.
Okay. Any other technical questions? Anybody from the audience now? Petitioner, would be happy to have you back.
Thank you. So just a couple of comments. First one on the parking. So the 6 additional parking spots, really the point of that was more employee parking. The goal, kind of as was mentioned, is not to have customers backing in and out of those parking spaces, with that being obviously where most of our customers come into the parking lot from. So, if we remove a few of those, that's not a problem. But the point of that was employee parking to clear up where employees are at moving forward. In regards to the landscaping, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but our goal, so we're new, we purchased the restaurants in Oshkosh March 1st from Dave Alinsky, who many of you may know, but our goal in any restaurant that we have is always to have landscaping that looks good, that is maintained, and that is, and follow whatever code is in any community that we're in. So I'm sure you hear that constantly, but we don't want, the goal is to have nice landscaping there, and we've worked closely with the church in order to come up with this plan and to make sure that they're comfortable with what we're doing, and I think that they would be, I think they'd be comfortable saying we've been pretty good to work with it throughout this process, and our goal is just to have a win-win for everybody here. And obviously, there's 2 order points right now. One of the big problems becomes when it takes a long time to order at the first order point versus second order point, that creates traffic flow that backs out into the road and creates congestion. And one of the goals is that by putting this in, that eliminates that problem moving forward. So, any other questions I can answer?
Were there other questions we ask? Evidently not right now. We might call you back. Anybody else that wants to speak to this, go ahead.
I'm representing the church at this point now, not
Okay.
Town of
Go ahead.
Algoma. So Joel Rasmussen, 3297 Creekside Drive, Town of Algoma. One of the concerns we had was just what you asked about the green space in there, or the buffer zone. If you could go back to the aerial map. And we had this conversation with Steve's group, and we haven't met since then. So their latest maps here, this is the first time I've seen them. But if you see our 2 driveways from the north to that big parking lot, we need to sever our parking lot on the east side of that east driveway. And then we will extend our parking lot to the south, following that line and matching up to that lower left parking lot. Does that make sense? Otherwise, I can come up there and,
You understand that?
yeah, right in there. So that would be a condition of this sale, of course. And I have had initial conversations with Steve and his group there about that. But the question we have, again, is that buffer zone. We can't be forced to move our parking lot any farther west than that. So based on what I'm seeing here, is we may not have enough of that, so we would need some variance on that. We're fine with anything that happens there as long as we have that buffer with vegetation and such. But I don't know the exact number of what that is right now.
Currently, is there parking on the east drive lot, east parking?
Yes, there is. If you go east from that
Instead.
east lot, yes. So we would lose that one whole line there, and then we would add those stalls to the south. And we would still be compliant by, I believe, 4 stalls by doing that.
So would you, a question really for staff, I guess, is, and maybe you're asking this, would you be compliant with the buffer?
I believe
Your
we,
side of the buffer requirement?
right, I believe we need 25 feet, and I don't think we're going to get that from what I'm seeing here. And that's, we're not concerned if we don't have the 25 feet. We're wondering if the city is concerned if we don't have the 25 feet.
Are you're fine with, call it the lower level landscaping that I think McDonald's is proposing in this very narrow buffer strip on their side?
Yes, originally, people were concerned about having a fence there, but if there's a solid vegetation, that we're certainly fine with that. That looks more natural anyways.
Would there be solid vegetation? Solid vegetation says to me an arborvitae 4 foot wide is, can you plant an arborvitae in a 4 foot wide?
Well, you certainly plant an arborvitae in a 4 foot wide area. I mean, you're not gonna get any decent deciduous.
Right now, where that lot line is divided is right along the east side of those stalls, which will be abandoned, right?
Correct, that'd
So
be
you
saw
gain-
cut out.
What is a parking stall, 10 feet deep?
9 by 18. That's a minimum. 9 by 18 feet deep.
Okay, so you gain 18 feet or so that you're removing all right along the property line separation there, correct?
It's actually more than that, because the 18-foot stalls don't come all the way back to the line down from the driveway. And we have no problem with adding vegetation on our property, you know, to
Joel, have we talked to you yet about the landscaping requirements that are to be imposed on you by this yet? Have we
No.
talked to anybody from the church?
No.
Probably be helpful if we sat down and talked a little bit, because once you cut, because right now you're cutting down that mature buffer between your property and the McDonald's property.
Right.
That's gonna have to be replaced in some fashion. We're taking all the mature trees, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna require a certain amount of plantings on your side of the parking lot after you cut it out. So we should probably, I don't know how far you guys are with the acquisition on this process right now, but I'm not sure if we can continue to move forward right now without laying this over for 2 weeks, at least so we're all on the same page on this thing.
Right, I was assuming that we were gonna get together before this too, and when I saw this on the agenda, thought it was a little ahead of time. So,
Just because we're talking about the landscaping, would the maples and oaks that they're proposing be able to grow on that then?
4 foot area, not actually.
Well, it sounds to me like,
I mean, I'd recommend that we lay this over for 2 weeks. I know this next meeting is it's gonna be about as many items as we have right now. But, too many questions with the development plans here, the landscaping on the church's side, the landscape, and a couple of the other issues on the McDonald side. I think we need to get those squared away and bring those back to you.
Well, I can address the parking issue too.
All right.
okay.
So should
We
you
make
need
a
a motion
motion
to
to
lay
lay-
over A and B, 6A and 6B? So
For a
moved.
second?
Yeah.
Michael?
Do you need to take comments on that or not? I mean, we have the petition.
yeah.
Yeah, could we ask the petitioner or anybody else in the audience if this is all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Joel's representing the church, so. Okay, motion and a second to lay this over for 2 weeks to clear up the items that we've been talking about.
At least to the August 15th.
At least
To the August 15th meeting.
The August 15 meeting. Any more discussion? Call the roll.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Forsythe.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Hens.
Okay,
It's a long way to go for a
Yeah.
layover.
I'm sorry, this is a very long meeting. We're still talking about item 7?
We
Land
are
disposition?
in the land disposition.
You're so right.
Let's get into
All right.
that one.
Land disposition, item 7, a vacant property located in that area, 1805 Jackson Street.
Sure, we are coming into the home stretch. You've seen this item before at a previous plan commission meeting. The city of Oshkosh received an offer to acquire this particular, the city's received an offer to acquire this property at the corner of Jackson and Murdoch Avenue. It is it's the site of the old KFC site. It's currently zoned SMU. Here it is. It's a vacant site. Currently, it has no access to Murdoch Avenue or Jackson Street. So any access on this particular property is going to have to come from either 450 West Murdoch Ave or 1821 Jackson Street. We did receive a potential site plan from the applicant today. I'm gonna hand this out. Showing what the petitioner is requesting to be able to put on the site as we move forward. This site, it's a very small site. The building envelope is very small on this particular site. If you look at this here, here's the building envelope around the site. What you're showing is what the petitioner is showing is a 40 by 70 foot building with associated parking on the site. The issues right now, as we see it, and as staff sees it, again, we got it today or late last week, is you have an encroachment into the setback area. You've got parking lot, you've got drive lane, you've got some issues with encroachments into the setback area. The other particular item that you see access coming in here off the adjacent property, which is Lee Yang's. So they have to square away that access. They'll have to get some type of access arrangement with Lee Yang's and or the Dollar Tree property. Because you also have, as you see this, I'm assuming this might be a drive-through of some sort, but you can see the traffic flow. It comes in and there's not you see this is the setback area, this is the site. You can't make that turn. If you're in a vehicle, you can't make a turn and make a left-hand turn and do it on the property. So they need some type of, in order to implement a plan like this, you need some sort of cross-access agreement to the north and over here to the west. Other issues with it, as we see it, again, there's a setback issue. The site as proposed doesn't meet the current setback requirements for the city. And then once you start to mix in the landscaping requirements, then those are some issues. That doesn't mean everything here is not insurmountable. Can the property, can this development potentially work in some fashion? Yes, they could work with city staff to try and develop a site plan that is less, requires less variances. Right now, it's a straight SMU, it's a straight zoning site, so any variances it's not zone PD, so any variances right now have to go before the zoning board of appeals. So that's one issue. And the other real big issue is, again, the access either through Lee Yang's or the Dollar Tree property to the north that requires some type of agreement with one of those adjacent property owners. Again, do we have other pictures in here? Okay, so this is the site plan itself. And I'm sure we'll get back to it. Jeff, what did I do? Did I break it?
Thanks.
Aren't there pictures in there? All right, we had gotten some nice pictures, some intended pictures from the petitioner, and you can come up and discuss it. I think that one of the pictures that they had shown us was similar to the subway and cell phone store out on Westtown Avenue, so they're kind of doing something like that, that architecture. Anything, if we move forward with a recommendation, we're recommending that, again, we lay this over to at least the August 15th meeting, to allow us to sit down and meet with the developer and kind of work up a site plan, a better site plan that works, but, you know.
Well, would that include knowing whether there's cross-access agreements, because without them, this plan's dead?
Well, I think what you could do is, in order to keep moving this thing forward, we would recommend a disposition with recommendation that approval of the development plan for the site. Essentially, it's almost like an option. We're telling the developer that he has to come back and provide us a site that can be developed. And then you have evidence of availability of access from either property. If you don't get that, then we don't move forward with the land disposition.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would say again that it needs to be right in, right out. There's no, these median strips,
Well, there's no access.
No left.
They don't have their own access to, they do not, their access has to come either through the Dollar Tree and their existing egress, or through Liang's and their existing egress. So
So whatever exists there is
Correct.
the kind of egress and ingress, okay.
Correct. So other technical questions you might have, I can try and answer them. Otherwise, the proposed owner and his representative.
Well, so I assume the proposal will include whatever encroachment on the setbacks are required, so we can view that, understanding the landscape plan and whatever water issues there are and how those are gonna be handled, whether there's cross-access to either one of the two properties, so we can see that there's proper flow and all that kind of stuff. And that'd be about it.
I think the developer really needs some comfort that, if they come back with a development plan that can kind of fit a box in here like they're being proposed, that then they'll start to bear that additional expense of going to we're really looking at doing almost like an SIP level development with the landscaping, the architectural, all that. But before they want to move forward with that, they want to make sure that, that the plan commission would find that suitable moving forward.
Not knowing the intensity of this facility, proposed facility, is there any concern or any study part of this that how it impacts the driveway just the further up at the restaurant?
No, we haven't looked at that. The intensity, you're looking at a 40 by 70 building with probably one or two businesses in there, one of them being a Domino's restaurant. So it's not generating a heck of a lot of, it's not gonna generate a huge amount of trips. We're not talking.
I just been concerned, between what's there now and then going down even further to DQ, the amount of negative traffic interaction coming off of.
No, you're correct, but, you look at the size of the site, the scope of it's not gonna add that many trips. That's a concern.
Is there potential zoning changes too? I'd like to know that.
The only potential zoning change you could potentially get here is probably a planned development. The SMU-based zoning will stay intact, so it's a matter of whether we think this is a PD site or whether it's a variance site. It fits a lot of criteria for variances. It's a small site. It's a difficult to develop site. It's got no access, so it does have some issues. So you probably do meet a lot of the variance standards.
Well, I'm concerned if setback here, and we say landscaping, we gotta have a little bit sight lines. I don't want a bunch of tall bushes growing up around here, because the pedestrian situation is so
Correct.
bad there.
Correct.
Nobody stops for pedestrians, even though there's a nice light
Sure.
indication. And so I'm concerned about landscaping that's too tall, that comes out here.
I see
and
something.
could potentially interfere.
I So you look at something like,
End of the sidewalk.
native plantings, maybe some landscape elements like some type of fencing or something that's kind of low, 3 feet or under. I wouldn't want to see arborvitae's popping
No,
up and,
no.
and doing the
But-
site. So, yeah, I think.
But that's, if we're
Yep.
talking about
Yep.
concerns, that's
Yep.
one of my concerns.
Yep, I think we can work through that.
Okay,
Any other concerns? Oh, yeah.
any more concerns? Then I think we need to ask if there's any public wanting to speak to this item.
And,
Petitioner wants to wait
well, I
until
think,
later.
I mean, I think he
It's on the
showed up,
agenda.
so I think you should probably show up and you can ask petitioner any questions. David has some questions about the intended use of the site. So I think it'd be appropriate to talk about that.
So I'll ask again if there's anybody here in the audience that wants to speak to this item, even though we will be laying it over. Do you have a chance to speak? Come to the podium, name and address, please.
Blake Graves, 3905 High Trail Court, Flower Mound, Texas. We are the Domino's franchisee in the area. We've owned the stores for 20 years, family-run business, based out of Minnesota, so we've got 110 stores across 9 different states. We've been doing very well in this town for the past 20 years. We bought it 20 years ago. We've been in our current location for about 15, and just kind of want to look to upgrade where we're at. Domino's is kind of implementing a new model where we're upgrading our locations and upgrading what we're doing. And so we saw the site on the corner here and thought, as a developer and also as a franchisee, we thought no better way than to kind of upgrade the image of that Jackson Street. And we saw this property and said, why don't we try to put a store there? So we realized that the site plan might not entail everything that fits all the requirements that are necessary for the city. We were asked to make this last like a week ago or a week and a half ago. So the timing wasn't necessarily ample to get all the boxes checked, and we realized that since it's such a small plot of land that you can build on, I think it's only 7,000 square feet that you can build on, there probably will be some variances that will be requested of us. We realize that there probably will have to be, or there will have to be an easement from either the north owner or the west owner. So before we kind of sink all these costs into this development and go into that, we already did sink the costs of me flying up here, taking time, coming to meet with you guys, but also into the site plan, et cetera. We'd like to at least know that this is something we can do with purchasing it. So I believe we're okay with tabling, making sure that the vegetation is what we want, the landscaping, making sure that we require all setbacks that are necessary, the traffic is according to what is proper for Jackson Street. But we also want to make sure that this is something that the city is going to approve, is us buying the land with those contingencies in there. So we would like to try to keep that process going if possible.
Any questions for the petitioner, other than what we've already had? Excuse me?
I heard what.
Okay, I guess not.
Okay.
You've heard our concerns, it's a very tight.
Yes, no, of course, yeah, and
It's a very tight site.
It
and
is.
we've got-
It is.
generally have issues with tight sites, and
Yeah.
so we're not guaranteeing that we're gonna
Yep.
say yes, but
Of course.
everybody's heard the concerns.
Of course, yeah, and it's a small plot of land. The good thing is we don't generate as much traffic as necessarily, coffee or fast food or some of those nature things. But, we do want to see this developed into something. We feel that this will be in excess of a $500,000 project. We would like the building to look something like that, which is just west of here, that has a Cousin Subs and Cellcom in there. So we would like to see a very nice building on that corner, something that's going to be appealing for the community. Also going to generate tax dollars. So we want to see something go there. We'd love to be even a bigger part of the community than we are now. But we just want to make sure that that's in the right way and have some confidence that the city is willing to let us do that.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank you. Anybody else that wants to speak to this item? Back to the commission. David?
I think to what Darren has said, maybe to paraphrase it, I'm happy to see if we can make it work. I mean, there's somewhat limited option. Either one of the adjacent property owners buys this parcel and expands their facility or facilities, or we have a standalone. And if we can make it work within, addressing our issues, I don't have a problem at all, and would encourage the developer to go ahead and see if work with the city to see that we can address the majority of the concerns and where we're going to need easements. And if it's realistic, then I would have no problem looking at easements or exception.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Jeff?
I would encourage looking at possibility of putting that in there. One, it provides, you know, the dominoes on that side of town. Potentially on that side to
One
serve.
north on
There's
Jackson.
one, there's a little couple blocks north. correct.
Well, you know, people like it, they like it. But, and like you said, like Dave said, our options are kind of limited in terms of that development to there, and we've talked about infill type developments. This would be a prime example of an infill type development that would be a good thing to do.
John?
Yeah, and to add on to what's already been said, I think as far as if you put something in here that's gonna be low impact for traffic, you can't ask for something more than a place that's just sending out deliveries for the most part. Yeah, you have some people who come in to pick up pizzas and whatnot, but it's not like people are coming in, sitting down and eating at Domino's in a family group or having parties there. It's not gonna be a high traffic thing right on the corner. So as far as that goes, I think that's another thing that actually helps their case with this.
Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion for layover.
2 weeks?
Over to, yeah, for August 15th.
Go ahead.
Would you mind if we did get approval from the city to purchase it first, going forward with that part, and then once all that's done, then coming back with the appropriate, steps to make sure that we can fit something on there once we get the easement, et cetera? I feel
There
2
was
weeks is
turn-
just two weeks is just too fast to get all that done.
How about 4 weeks then?
I mean, you could do like I said, you could condition it subject to approval of a city-approved development plan and evidence of availability of access from an adjacent property.
Yeah, but Darren, we don't stipulate, we don't restrict him being able to buy a piece of property.
Yeah, we do, it's our property, so we can.
Yeah,
so-
that's what's on the agenda, is
Yeah,
land
the
disposition.
city currently owns it.
We own it, it's.
The
we
plan
own
is not on
property.
the agenda. It's land disposition.
Yeah. We have concerns with the developability of the site, and what we don't wanna do is we don't wanna sell a site to somebody that's not developable.
Right.
So that's a concern, so, I mean, we could, the recommendation could be approval of development slash the site, evidence of availability of access. That's the only way that the site's gonna get developed. It's not gonna get developed without either of those two. We have to approve it per our zoning code.
We can't guarantee.
No, of course, yeah.
You know,
And,
we could vote to dispose, and then we might vote in 2 weeks that we don't see how this is going.
Yeah, you know what might happen is we might go to the city might say, yes, we approve you to buy it contingent upon getting the easement, et cetera. And we might get the easement, we come back, you guys say, that doesn't fit for the planning of this, and then at that time, it doesn't work. But we'd at least like to know from the city that they will approve us buying it, and then move forward with the easement and the layout of the site to suffice you guys.
Well, is there another way to do it, and that's take an option? You're asking us to approve the disposition of the property, and we don't know if it's gonna work. Would another way to do it is
One option would be the way to, I mean, that would be the way to do it.
to allow them to take an,
Grant them an option to purchase contingent.
and the city can do that without us, can they not, or?
Frankly, I hadn't thought through all those permutations.
I would think,
Yeah, David?
I would think that the one thing that the city understands, even with all these unanswered questions, is that we have somebody that's interested in, A, acquiring the property, and B, developing the property. So there's some kind of feeling from the city that, that they're gonna, let this thing run to ground. So I think that there's a vehicle without saying, look, we're gonna just say grant selling disposal of the property, but there may be that workaround.
Yeah, they aren't gonna go through all the process to do nothing with it. They wanna buy it, they wanna get a business there.
Well, we can still condition the disposition on approval of a site plan. And then, again, approval of the site plan and evidence of availability of access from either property. The land sale wouldn't go through, the land sale couldn't go through, or wouldn't go through until they show us evidence of those two things. That allows them to continue to move forward.
Darren, wouldn't you just make
Jeff.
that as part of the option? You know, grant them a disposition on the option to purchase, conditioned upon what you just said.
We've been requested of the option, we're responding to a land, we're responding to an offer to purchase. So that's what we're responding to at this point.
I think what Darren said makes sense. My side, our side, vote to approve the land disposition, but conditional on eventual approval by us of the site plan, which might not be exactly like that, and
Approval by the plan
cross-access
commission.
agreements.
Approval by the plan commission, or approval by the plan commission of a development plan for the site.
Yeah, I realize it'll have to come back.
Okay, so, Plan Commission, are we ready to approve that motion?
Would you just read
Oh,
it?
Approve
we
the
have-
If I could,
Steve?
with it being laid over, I wasn't gonna bring this up, but one of the things that, as an additional condition on there, just to make sure that there's no confusion down the road, because we've run into this, would be to make sure that there's a condition on there that the deed states there's no access onto the abutting roadways. That is clearly in there, just so.
Oh,
that
okay.
in years down the road, when the plan commission, nobody'd expect the plan commission conditions to find that the access is restricted, it's actually in the deed of a recorded document, so that we don't have that hiccup later.
Okay, third
Sure.
condition then. Alan?
A couple of thoughts. One would be, I think there needs to be some kind of time frame if you're going to do something like this, where they actually would need to come back with a plan, because I don't think we can do this for a perpetual offer. I mean, in theory, we've had projects worked on for years and before it comes to pass, so I think we need a certain time frame. And it's getting to the point where I still think it's probably best to lay it over, because of the issues with the access and the site plan, those are gonna be tough to
Yeah, they are.
overcome. And I'm not exactly sure we can do everything that's needed to get this project done. So I'm not even sure we have enough information right now to make that decision. So I'd still go back to the original staff recommendation, just to lay it over for 2 weeks until we get more ducks in a row regarding the site plan.
No conditions.
Well, a condition as to how quickly we come back to plan
Yeah,
commission
but I
on the
mean, no
land
conditions for
disposition.
layover, just to lay it over.
Just to lay it over.
And the,
Bring it back in the 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it's gonna take to do.
the minutes are indicative of the check the boxes that need to be addressed.
Yes. I think everybody is aware of the headline issues that we need to cover regarding setback and access.
So, for the petitioner, the takeaway he has here is our intent to work with him to develop a solution that allows him to buy that property. Correct? He's gotta have some kind of takeaway
Yeah,
from
yeah.
there.
I think so.
And I think that's our general consensus, is we're not necessarily against a development there, that as long as he can develop a developable site, that we're more prone to give a positive disposition so that they can look
Yeah.
at moving forward with purchasing the property.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
From
if
a
we can
planning
make it work,
standpoint, from his standpoint,
if we
corporate
can make
standpoint.
it work,
Right,
developing that corner is not a bad, is an all right idea.
right.
So a motion to lay over.
Make the motion to lay over.
Michael?
Time?
Can we have a second and then we'll talk
Well,
about discussion?
I'd second it,
All right, now discussion on the layover.
I'm sorry, is it, would it be 2 weeks, the next meeting, or a month? What
I was
is,
gonna ask.
what is a
That's what-
realistic?
That's why I wanna ask,
workable-
that's why I wanna ask
Please.
the petitioner as far as how long does he think he needs to come up with a
Could
We could always do it in 2 weeks, and if it's not ready, we can extend it after that. I mean, if we haven't worked through some of the issues that we discussed tonight, we'll come back, we'll put it on the agenda, but we'll request to lay it over again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd motion for 2 weeks.
Okay, so it's just a motion to lay over, and seconded by Jeff.
Can we hear the petitioner on that? You think you're gonna have enough time?
First of all, this wasn't even the original site plan that we sent, which is a little frustrating. And then second, it doesn't make sense for us to undergo more costs on a site plan when we aren't even approved by the city with price or the ability to purchase. I get we have to approve a site plan, but as a developer, I don't feel the need to undergo more costs until I'm approved by the city to buy it for said price, and then come back contingent upon, can get a site plan approved by you guys, and can get the necessary easements from north or west property owner.
I don't know if I see a resolution to this problem. We need the things that we've talked about before we can assure you that we'll vote for land disposition, because we don't want to sell you the land only to find out it isn't gonna work. And you need assurances before you buy the land. I don't know how we do this. Time, so, 2 weeks. Yes, sure, if you're gonna,
Phil Egger, 302 East Wisconsin Avenue. I think is what kind of Blake's looking for is, we do development as well. We've, worked with Darren in the past. I think they want some level of assurance where they can kind of tie the property and like go through their contingency period to know if they want to, go through some more of the process. I think it's just the ability for Blake's attorney to keep working with the city to put together an offer of purchase, but he's obviously going to have contingency saying, hey, if I can't get site plan approval or I can't get access, I'm not going to purchase it. So I think they both kind of work each other out about the sale not going through if he doesn't get approval on site plan and access. But I think as a developer, you want to tie a piece of property up before you start really digging into a lot of your due diligence, your costs, because if, his group's not going to want to front $20,000-$30,000 on phase ones and all that kind of stuff without having some level of hold to know that, he's not going to start working on this, and then another person sees, 2 weeks later, he's working on this, and they try to, kind of get in. They want to kind of have that level
I'd
of
be willing to
hold.
bet that there's not a line of people waiting.
Like I said, I can't speak what other people's ideas are, but I think is what he's looking for is the planning commission to say, hey, look, we understand you have these challenges. We'd like to let the attorneys and the legal people say, yeah, keep working on the legal aspect. And I think they'll work each other out. I mean, what Darren was kind of saying before is let it kind of go to the next level with at least getting some, level of contract that they can feel comfortable with investing a bunch of money, because it's going to end up being a chicken and the egg. They're not going to want to invest the money, and then it's just going to sit there and kind of go nowhere. So that's just.
David.
Well, then I'd go back. If the concern is that somebody else is waiting in the wings, then have this, talk to the city and get an option on the property.
Well, and that would probably involve still a legal contract, so I don't know if the city attorney would like direction from the planning commission to say, we at least kind of see this, or I don't know quite how it works, but, I mean, I'm just using an example, but even outside of someone else coming in, it's just having a property kind of.
Well, so you take a 120-day option or whatever. I mean, the city does options, I think, between the city and the industrial parks and things like that, and I don't know if RDA does, but that that would probably be the venue to go, that you've got at least that assurance that gives you the ability to acquire the property, and yet if it doesn't meet the objectives, either your objectives or what the city's trying to do, then there's a way out.
Absolutely, and like I said, Blake's group, if they're not, if both property owners eventually down the road say, we're not gonna give you any level of easement, then it doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, they're not gonna spend the money to own a corner on a roundabout just to own a corner on a roundabout. So I think both work, I think he just wants to have some assurance that he can kind of keep, at least the land part of it, the purchase part can kind of keep moving while we're kind of going through design phase.
Yeah, okay, but I think the option idea is probably a good one.
It gets us back to the same place with the land, if we condition the land disposition based on the things that we talked about, it's accomplishing the same thing. You just gotta tie it up for a certain amount of period, but they still have to come back and do the same thing. They still have to prove that.
So
they
we
can
go
prove
back
it.
to your motion of voting to dispose of the land based on eventual approval of the development.
Site
Site
plan.
plan, cross-access, and that the deed states
plan
there's
approval
no
by the-
access
site plan by
from,
approval.
to the roundabout from that property.
We get a timeline on there?
6 months, maximum time of 6 months. Alan had an opinion. Alan?
Yeah, thanks.
What was the question? I missed that.
We're back to the point of, do we go forward with a direction of conditional approval of the land disposition based on the city approval of the site plan, what else?
Cross-access.
It's been a long night already.
And deed restriction.
And deed restriction.
Or do we just lay it over for 2 weeks and come back with the same?
Come back with the same problem.
Off the top of my
Or
head, I
come
was
back, see.
thinking we lay it over for 2 weeks and work with them to revise their offer so that it identifies a time period for 120 days for them to do their due diligence. And that would give them the comfort on covering that. And then I could run it through the legal department to make sure that we've met all the city requirements for processing something like this with that type of condition.
Yeah, but now I don't see why it's a big deal that we can't just disposition it with those conditions, and that way it gives him what he needs to move forward.
Well, our original staff recommendation was to lay it over for another 2 weeks, so that's what our recommendation.
No, I understand that.
does have a contingency period in it. A contingency period in there, like Alan was saying.
So I don't see why we can't just approve the disposition contingent upon the three things during the period of time that's in the existing purchase agreement, or if you wanna put 120 days, I don't care. And leave it at that, and let everybody work it out. That way, at least it gives him some kind of comfort level. This will go to the common council,
We'll go to common council, correct?
And
all right, which would
So
be
we
next week.
still have time.
And one of my first points was there needs to be a certain time period, so if we can put that as a condition that this is 120 days.
Yeah, we put it as a condition of 120 days.
If things don't
Is that
work,
all right?
120 days,
days?
they can always come back and we can go longer. if we
Can't get it
need-
done in
well,
120
I was just gonna say,
Then it ain't gonna get done.
If it's not happening in 120 days, it's not happening.
there we go.
Okay. So
So- Did we have a motion?
we're back to ask, we had a motion.
I can withdraw my motion.
So now we're back to a motion approving the land disposition,
Conditionally,
conditional
With condition.
on,
approval by the city of a site plan,
cross-access agreement,
cross-access, evidence of cross-access.
the deed restriction, no access from their site to the
To the
roundabout,
adjacent right away.
and
120
120
days.
days.
And, yeah.
Okay, somebody second. More discussion?
No.
No. Call the roll.
Where's Eddie?
It would,
Okay, Kiefer.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Morrison.
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Hens?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We have to do the community development plan.
Darlene's here, I'm not sure we have time frames to meet on it, so. Darlene, do we have to do that tonight?
Yes.
Okay, we have to do it.
Okay. Grown.
She'll be quick.
Yeah, but that's.
$700,000. I wasn't here.
Hello. Hi. Every year, the City of Oshkosh receives community development block grant funds from the federal government. And though any projects we undertake as part of the CDBG program must meet 3 national objectives: benefiting low to moderate income persons, aid in prevention of slum and blight, and urgent needs, which are usually disasters and emergencies. The 2017 allocation is $761,417. The city divides that funding into 4 broad categories. Central City redevelopment. We use this money for acquisition and demolition of slum and blight properties. And these are a few examples of the different slum and blight activities we've done within the past year. Another big component, which is low to moderate income benefits, is our housing rehabilitation program, where the city provides housing improvement loans to low to moderate income households that are owner occupied. And here are some examples also of homes that have been rehabilitated within the past year.
Your screen said 335, it said actually 380.
I didn't grab my other sheet, I'm sorry. Did I make a
It says
typo?
38500.
I did, no, the housing improvement program is 330,500, neighborhood initiatives is 500. And it's,
50,000.
or 50,000, thank you. So, yes, that's the 330 for housing rehab. And then, oops, wrong way, sorry. And then the neighborhood initiatives is 50,000. And that's usually under the housing and neighborhood initiative category. And some examples also of activities undertaken with that money in the past year. We've also done a housing improvement loan also through the neighborhood initiative in the past year. Another big component for low to moderate income activities is the public service agencies that we allocate $110,000 to. HUD has various cap allocations that we can put on all of our categories. And this year we have received 11 applications, and we are, the review committee is looking to fund all activities. And then there's administration and planning. This is used for covering staff salaries, training, and consultants. This year, the city will be starting to work on its affirmatively furthering fair housing plan, which will require the hiring of a consultant to assist with preparation of that plan. As part of the administration, we also fund the Fair Housing Center of Northeast Wisconsin through their Appleton satellite office. They assist the city with enforcing our fair housing ordinance. Our next steps is to have the Plan Commission make a recommendation that this action plan is consistent with the city's 2005 to 2025 comprehensive plan, official maps, and other planned activities of the city. And then it will go to the Common Council for a public hearing, review, and action, and then be submitted to HUD on or about August 14th. Comments, written comments or questions can be directed to me. And questions?
I do.
I figured that, David.
Even from the get. We hit our 70% of low and
Yes,
moderate.
yes, actually, this year's this year's percentage for meeting the low to moderate income was 90%.
Outstanding.
Other questions? I guess not. Okay, motion
Is it,
to approve with the finding that the listed projects are not in conflict with our comprehensive plan, and better yet, they are cooperative with our comprehensive plan.
so move.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, call the roll, please.
Kiefer.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Borsec.
Aye.
Holmes. Hens.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thanks, Dirk.
Thank
Sorry
you.
we had to.
Oh, no, not a problem.
You sort of-
Oh, don't worry.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we have a workshop.
Oh, yeah.